You were listening live, direct from London. The beautiful violin playing of Elena Urioste.
Thank you.
Thank you for playing that over the rainbow here. And you were listening to a special Tuesday edition of Acoustic Thursday at Studio 51 on WNHH FM, New Haven's home for community radio. And we are honored to have the presence today of a world-class musician who is spending, I believe it is 3 days in her city. Yes. And she's busy. Elena is the co-founder of Kaleidoscope Chamber College. She's a world-traveling soloist with major orchestras. She's in town to give a performance with an ensemble at the Schwartzman Center at Yale. But she's also teaching yoga. We're going to talk about that on the program. She's been combining music with yoga, which does make a lot of sense to me, but we'll remember that. She's going to be at Educational Center for the Arts, working with the kids. And so welcome to New Haven. How do you like it so far?
Thank you. I love it. I mean, I've been here a few times. I last played with the New Haven Symphony. I think it was in 2018. So okay. It's nice to be back.
Back in the days BC, before COVID.
Exactly.
What was it like playing with the symphony here?
Oh, it was great. I love that hall. I think it's magnificent.
Yeah, they did an amazing job restoring. I mean, it was kind of cool before, but they really did an amazing job restoring that place. Yeah. So what's it like as a musician? You go around the world. Tell me about that hall. Is there anything same, different playing? Does it remind you of other places you play?
Oh, well, I mean, every hall is a little bit different, obviously, visually, acoustically. I think different halls inspire different sorts of behaviors in audiences. So my memory of that hall was that just the huge organ and how sort of gold and shimmering it was. And I remember I was conveniently playing the Corn Gold violin concerto, and it just felt very appropriate, that color palette.
Uh-huh. What about when you were actually playing? Were you playing at the same time the organ was playing?
No organ in that piece.
No organ in that piece. So. Okay, so just being in the room.
Yes, exactly.
Well, that's interesting to you, too, because when you're a performer, right, you go around the world and you play in all these venues. I'm assuming the setup of the venue does affect what comes out when you're playing the violin.
Certainly. I mean, different environments inspire different things. For example, just now I was continuously reminding myself to be very still so as not to, like, whack the microphone with my
And not just whack the microphone. You're working here at the exact opposite end of Schwartzman Center, Woolsey Hall. This is the most rustic rubric. They're not going to get multi-directional mics, and you got it right in there.
But it was good. It forced me to focus on my posture and being very intentional with my movements, which I guess is very much related to what I do in teaching yoga for musicians.
Ooh, that's interesting about posture. You're listening to Elena Urioste, who is a world-traveling soloist, major orchestras, violinist. And I guess, would you call yourself a classical musician, or because you do so many genres, do you like to avoid that label?
Certainly, I'm a classical musician. I was classically trained. I would say the majority of what I do is classical. And even, my slightly genre-bending activities aren't really very far from classical.
And also, is there any musician now who doesn't deserve the label genre bending?
Yeah, it's so overused, like versatile.
And the whole idea of classical is interesting because in its day, it probably was not considered classical. Right?
No,
It's what people are listening to. And when people are doing experimental original work with classical, it's kind of interesting to call it classical. Is it because of the instruments that are played and the technique of the play and maybe the chord structures or scales that it plays on? Like, what makes it still classical when you have bang on a can?
Not sure, honestly.
Well, you decided, you surprised me in such a nice way that you decided to open with Yip Harburg's classic Over the Rainbow. What made you decide to play that piece?
It's a real favorite of mine. And actually it was one of possibly the very first piece that my husband, Tom Poster, who I'm sure we'll chat about soon, arranged for us. It's technically a violin and piano piece in his arrangement, but I just did my thing because we can't fit a piano in here.
It was written for a movie, right? Wizard of Oz?
Yes, Wizard of Oz.
I don't know if it was written for, but it's interesting when people wrote for movies in those days. And tell me if I'm wrong about that, because that was the mid 20th century. It wasn't exactly jazz, but there was this influence of having a little complexity in what are singable melodies. Like in that song, I was once introduced to a beautiful version of it with on banjo with this kind of tenderness to it, where the person added, like in the G chord, an E, which I guess is a sixth, that kind of a passing note that adds a little bit of wistfulness to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think
I think you could do. What I'm saying is, I think you could do a lot with that song. And I was interested.
Yes, and we'll actually play that at one of our concerts on Thursday. in a fuller arrangement by Tom involving all of the strings. But I think the beauty of a song like that, which I guess could be considered Great American Songbook, is that it does lend itself to, you know, really different interpretations in terms of how you arrange or transcribe it. But the song at its core is just such a masterpiece.
I also love the lyrics.
You can't really go wrong. Yeah.
So what were you doing with it? I noticed that at times, like I didn't know it was that song at first, right? I said,
Right.
oh my God, that's what I'm listening to, which of course you're supposed to do. So you're sort of improvising, but is it accurate to say at other parts it wasn't exactly improvising, it was technique, like when you slowed down the transition from one note to another to vary the trajectory of the melody?
Sort of, but it actually just starts with the verse, which is one of Tom's arranging trademarks. He loves, putting a verse in, especially if it's not one that people know immediately. And then you get to the chorus, of course, and then it's actually really unfair of me to play it without him because the melody is always sort of going through it, just in his part, and he gave me
But I was interested in how you varied the tempo, and when you decided to play more than one string at a time, and when you didn't. What was the decision making that went into that?
You'd have to ask Tom. It's just
you were playing.
Well, I'm just doing what was on the page.
Okay.
But yeah, I think the beauty of a string instrument is that you can do all sorts of things. You can trill, you can flutter around, you can play double stops, and yeah, we get to do all sorts of things. And I think when people write well for the instrument, they showcase all of its capabilities.
Well, that was just a terrific version of Over the Rainbow Bridge. And you're listening to Elena Urioste, who is visiting our city. The main event is Thursday, April 24th at Yale Schwarzman Center. Is that open to the public? Can people just come?
I believe so. Yes, you have to register, but very much open to the public.
So go to their website. Yeah. And so you're with a group with your husband, Tom Poster, who since the pandemic, you've been sort of a team, right?
Well, we've been a team for much longer than the pandemic, but our partnership, like many partnerships, was certainly solidified during COVID. So Tom and I actually met back in 2013 when I was working a lot in London. I was a member of the BBC New Generation Artist Scheme, which sort of promotes young artists and gives them all sorts of recording and performance opportunities. And we were put together to make a recording.
So it was like a Yenta kind of
musical blind date.
Yeah.
But it was strictly professional at that time. It worked really well musically. It felt totally effortless. But after that, we sort of parted ways and didn't expect to reconnect. But then a few years later, we came together again to play a recital in a different part of England, and then things started brewing.
So that kind of partnership was it always also a professional partnership, or did it start out as a...
No, it started off professionally. The romance came later. And we married in 2019, have been playing loads of recitals together, but started the Kaleidoscope Chamber Collective in 2017, sort of just as a result of wanting to do more of what we loved, which is to say we wanted to play the music that we loved with the people that we love. And as it so happened, all the people in our circle represented a wide variety of backgrounds and nationalities and races. And it sort of by accident became a real celebration of diversity in music and of humanity. And I would say a particular focus of Kaleidoscope is playing and discovering, searching out the music of underrepresented voices, whether because of gender or race or just from being forgotten. We love to play music that feels a bit like buried treasure to us, alongside, of course, masterpieces by all the usual suspects.
Like Yip Harburg and...
Sorry?
Like Yip Harburg and Bach. And so is it Kaleidoscope that is the name of the chamber group tomorrow night?
Yes, Kaleidoscope Chamber Collective.
So you're going to have a clarinetist, David Krakauer, a Grammy Award-winning tenor, Kareem Suleiman, and a violinist, Savitri Greer, and a violinist, Kyle Ambrose, and a cellist, Laura van der Heyden.
Laura van der Heyden. Yes.
Hayden. So that's a nice, and that's the group that tours?
Well, no. So Kaleidoscope is a huge roster of musicians at this point. We've got, loads of strings, brass, singers, woodwinds, and various combinations of us come together for specific projects. We play a lot in London at the Wigmore Hall, where we're in ensemble in residence. But we sort of play all over, and different combinations of people come together based on repertoire, geography, chemistry, So this particular group has never played together in this specific formation, though we've all mostly played together in some combinations. And yeah, this is just the collection of souls who.
And are you on a tour, or was this just coming?
We are on a tour, yes. So we're here for 3 days in New Haven, but we've just come from Washington, D.C., where we played at the Phillips Collection. We go on to Boston and then Schenectady and finish in New York City.
How's Schenectady get in there?
There's a very prestigious series there, the Capital Region Classical. So.
And how did it go so far? What was DC like?
DC was fantastic. The Phillips Collection is a gorgeous place to play. It was Easter Sunday. We couldn't believe how many people were there. The birds were chirping. It was magnificent.
And the blossoms still, right?
They're on their way out, but it was
okay.
Very springy and beautiful.
It's ephemeral there. Elena Urioste here on WNHH's Acoustic Thursday in Studio 51. It is Tuesday. Got a special edition because we were lucky to have her come in. So tell me how you got into violin. So you were 2 years old watching Sesame Street. You saw Yitzhak Perlman, right?
Yes, the story goes, because I don't actually remember this, but my parents have told me many times that I was watching an episode of Sesame Street. Perlman was on, I believe, chatting with Elmo. I saw him playing the violin and just said, I want to do that. They thought it was weird. I don't come from a family of musicians, and they held me off, probably quite sensibly. But I just kept pestering them for an instrument. And then finally, when I was 5, we had moved to the Philadelphia area, and the public school that I attended actually had a strings program, a Suzuki teacher. So I took it up then.
Then you're off to the races. You went to Juilliard eventually. And, it's kind of interesting the way a kid can know something.
Yes.
Because, it could just be not knowing something. Like, I want to go do that. And then you lose interest in baseball or an instrument after 2 minutes. But you saw something at 2.
I guess so. Yeah. And it is interesting.
What does that make you think? What does that make you think about how you could tell?
I really don't know now as the parent of a 3-year-old. I do wonder, each interest, like, oh, is this going to be the thing that sticks, or is this just a fun passing whim? And I think you just have to follow the child. And if they seem insistent on something, listen to them.
What do you remember about being 5 years old, picking up the violin and taking anything you remember about if it felt natural, felt like a calling, if that's exaggerating? Was it hard to practice?
All of those things. I think I loved it fiercely. I decided right then and there that I was going to be a violinist, a concert violinist and a concert soloist, specifically because I obviously wanted to be out in front, not a shrinking violet here. But I did not want to practice in any sort of measured, constructive way. So I think the challenge for me was slowing down, like walking before I ran. And I think just my parents, as I said, they weren't musicians, so they didn't have any vested interest in me being a violinist. But, when it became clear that I was musically talented and needed private lessons, their deal was, we'll take you and we'll pay for these, but you have to meet us halfway with the work, and you have to do what they say, including practice slowly. And eventually I got into a good rhythm.
Do you remember any moments from your childhood playing where a song hit you in a certain way when you finally got the idea of how to bow, or a performance that you realized in the interaction with the audience or with other musicians that it spoke to you, that it felt right?
Oh, I mean, so many. But I remember the first thing that came to mind when you asked me that was the first time I remember being truly moved by music, like tears sprang to my eyes. I was 6 years old, I think, and my teacher, a brilliant violinist by the name of Xiao Fuzhu in the Philadelphia area, he was just playing this little piece called Seashell, and it's still one of my favorite little encore pieces for violin and piano. Just playing it in the house where he taught, and me just thinking it was so stunning. There were all these fluttery runs and something called harmonic, so a real like whistling sound, and I just thought it was the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard.
So harmonic, I know on a guitar how you do that when you don't press the string all the way down, higher up in the neck to get a kind of different, both a different tone to the note, but also a different octave.
Yes, it's a different frequency.
So how does it work on a violin? Like, what did you learn
That's
at
exactly
6?
how you don't depress the string. Well, you put one finger down and then another one, the specified interval above that, and you don't press that top finger down all the way. You just sort of lightly hover it over the string.
Same way guitar, yeah.
Yeah, and it makes a sort of whistling
But
Think like Mariah Carey in her upper register.
how do you get it to, like, did you pluck the string? Or
No, and then you bow it.
You bow it,
Yeah.
okay. And you did that at 6?
I didn't do it. He did it.
Oh,
I thought it was
he did
amazing.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
I wasn't doing anything but listening and like weeping softly.
And how about Juilliard? What was that like?
Oh, that wasn't my main school, honestly.
Okay.
People love to celebrate Juilliard, but my undergrad was at the Curtis Institute in Philadelphia, and that was a totally wonderful experience. I was a Philadelphia local, so Curtis was just my dream from such a young age, and it's such a tiny school. Only when I was there, about 160 people. At the time, there weren't the new dorm facilities, or the new building didn't exist at all. So it was just this mansion on Rittenhouse Square in Philadelphia, bit Hogwartsy, and it was just magical. I loved my teacher, Joseph Silverstein. He was like one of the most important people in my life, and I learned so much, not only from him, but also my colleagues, the fellow students, and the orchestra conductor, Otto Werner Müller. Yeah.
And then how did you go from there to being able to full-time be a soloist? Did you just audition for stuff? Did you?
It sort of sneaks up on you. I think for a lot of us students, we were doing competitions. So I had done a competition, the Sphinx competition, which happens every year in Detroit. It's for Black and Latino string players. And I'd done it and won it once when I was 16, and then I did it again when I was 20. And when I was 20, that's sort of how my career took off, I guess. Just playing with all the major U.S. orchestras through the aid of Sphinx, and I got management then, and then it sort of just snowballed from there. But I was technically in school until I was 22 or 23. I did actually go to Juilliard briefly, but just for a year.
But they never could say you went to Juilliard. That shows up in your stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean.
But then you talked about how you're a classical musician. Of course, like any other musician, you have various influences. When I look you up online, both in terms of your genres that they talk about influencing you, it's quite wide. I mean, Nat King Cole, Radiohead, Frank Sinatra, Ella Fitzgerald, Stevie Wonder, and that you also spoke about your own kind of multiple influences in your own life, about being Mexican, Basque, Italian, Russian, Hungarian, American born and raised. Tell me about that, where you're equally at home outside the arbitrary lines of this country, you said. How does that affect you as a musician? Can you understand different kinds of music more easily? Do you... Tell me why it's relevant.
Who knows? I mean, sometimes it feels relevant and sometimes it doesn't. Growing up as I guess you could call me mixed race. My dad is Hispanic and my mom is, Russian, Hungarian, Italian, Jewish. So I think they never made me aware of any of this in like a preachy sort of way. But I think I did find a sense of belonging when I first went to the Sphinx competition when I was 16 years old and was playing with this entire orchestra of Black and, for me, Latino string players, and saying like, oh, wow, there are like other people who play my instrument who look like me, and that's really cool. And I didn't think that was something that was important, but as it turns out, it is. That was really meaningful. At the same time, I think that, it sounds so cheesy and cliche, but music is something that has the power. It doesn't always do this, but it has the capability of transcending, all the human stuff. It connects us on a sort of more...
Goes deeper into who we are.
It goes deeper and
yeah.
wider. Like, it connects us more cosmically, I think. Or it can. Doesn't always. But it has that power. And so I think... Yeah, I don't know. Probably a vague answer, but I think sometimes these things matter and sometimes they don't. Well, I don't think me being, a bit Russian helps me understand certain music more, but it might make me viscerally attracted to more music.
Well, we think about that music a lot too, because on the
others.
one hand we talk about ethnic influences on music. We talk about R&B come from soul or the blues. We talk about British music, but then it often seems like musicians often cross those boundaries so easily because music is more universal, and that blues actually has roots in the Appalachian song structures, and vice versa. And I just wondered sometimes whether it's useful us to look at the different streams of music that flow together and think about where they come from, or if sometimes that is a little bit too restrictive, and people imposing a framework on music that actually flows so naturally.
I mean, I think a
across
curiosity
borders.
about tradition and the various directions that it take is super interesting. I don't know that it necessarily you can't always hear when someone is very historically informed, but I'm not sure that matters. For me, I think that the most important thing that I seek out in terms of listening to other musicians and musicians who I respect and am interested in is, it's not the music itself, it's not the performer itself, but it's the performer's relationship to the material, whatever that material is. So, like the way the performer embodies and conveys the message of the musical material, that's what I'm interested in. And there's the sort of synergy between the storyteller and the story, I think, and the way they deliver it to the audience.
You listen to Elena Urioste, who's a co-founder of Kaleidoscope Chamber of Commerce. They're in town for an April 24th, Thursday 4 p.m. concert at Yale Schwartzman Center. You might see her through the window at ECA on Audubon Street doing master classes. And as of today in New Haven, in her first day, she's already done a yoga course or two. So since 2009, you've been teaching yoga. You co-founded a program, Intermission, that combines music, movement, and mindfulness to make music making a healthier, more holistic practice for students and professionals alike through yoga and meditation. Tell me about that connection. Tell me how you're carrying that out. Yeah. It's really interesting.
So, important distinction. I haven't been teaching since 2009. I've been practicing since 2009. I got certified 10 years later. It took me a while to dip my toes into the actual official teaching of it. But from the first class that I went to in 2009, I was just immediately hooked. I found a sense of bodily presence that I had never known before. I was very much like an inside kid growing up, was not very sporty, not athletic, always bruising myself and falling down, just like terrible body awareness, basically. So when I found a yoga practice that really resonated with me, it was like it just hooked me from the inside out. And instantly I found a greater sense of strength and peace in my body. Certainly I grew a bit better at my sense of proprioception got a little better, and I stopped like walking into things as much.
I can relate.
And it sort of accidentally, all the benefits transferred over to violin playing. I wasn't searching for any sort of musical benefits, but they happened.
Can you tell me that specifically?
Yeah, of course. So in that style of yoga that I was practicing, you would...
And what style was that?
Bikram yoga. Now it's just called hot yoga, or original hot yoga. And you do everything in front of a mirror. You repeat each pose 2 times, so you can literally see progress from one try to the next. It's very much about meeting yourself where you are, no expectations. The postures are accessible, but still challenging, and it's hot, so you're really tested in a lot of ways. And I just found the whole thing so intoxicating. So, for example, when you would balance, first one foot and then the other, I realized that because of years of favoring one foot when I was playing the violin, one whole leg was significantly stronger than the other. So things like working out how to balance my weight across both feet, those things, you wouldn't think that they affect your violin playing, but they affect your violin playing.
I would think they would. How did it affect your playing?
Well, I just felt infinitely more centered and rooted and not crooked, because we think somehow that our arms are disconnected from the rest of the body, but obviously they're not. It's one ecosystem.
So if you're more connected, if you're more evenly balanced, how does that affect when you play? Does it make it easier to hit a note? Does it get you deeper into the note when you're playing it for a long time? Does it just keep your pacing?
I mean, for me, it just made me feel more inside the whole system and less like I was putting this like foreign wooden box onto my body, and more like the whole system was operating as one, I guess, holistically. I felt my breath become much more conscious and intentional, and I started thinking of my bow arm as an extension of my breath. I started being able to, I would have to practice things less because I could achieve accuracy more quickly. Just the whole process
And
became much
I don't
more.
want to read into what you're saying. You know, it sounds to me also that you got deeper into the music as a result. If you're breathing and you're approaching your
Sure.
flow, if the
I
bow
mean,
feels
certainly,
no, I
if
don't mean if it's not true, don't say sure. I mean, like it just sounded to me I was hearing a connection to the music you're playing and a more complete flow from the instrument to you.
well, I certainly felt more comfortable. I started to feel more comfortable, and when you're comfortable, you can allow yourself to sort of sink into things. Another concrete thing that happened was my attention span became much more sort of streamlined and focused. So, I still didn't achieve, I don't know if you want to call it flow state every moment of every concert, but there is a similar thing that happens in a yoga practice if you really are able to lose yourself and let the breath be your guide. Um, that became a more similar experience when I was playing music as well. So,
And then 10 years later, you start becoming a teacher.
yes, I went to
And it
teacher
sounds to
training.
me that your teaching incorporates the music.
Definitely. Well,
Tell
I
me
love
about what you're doing.
the
What's your
reason I
thing?
got certified is because I wanted to teach yoga to other musicians, and allow them to feel the benefits of bodily awareness, joint alignment, using your breath as a guide for playing music, um, and just generally making the process of practicing and performing a much happier, more holistic enterprise.
That's lovely. So do you teach a regular class? Or all your students musicians?
I don't teach a regular class,
Oh, they're
though
like
during the
special classes.
pandemic, my partner Melissa and I we would offer online classes once a week. But since then, no, we mostly do in-person workshops. Something like this residency at the Schwartzman Center.
Which we're not calling a residency, by the way. Remember, it's a
Oh,
term of art.
our
Our visit, our
happening,
3-day, very busy visit, doing a lot of different stuff.
experience
Yeah.
at the Schwartzman Center.
Yeah.
It's sort of the perfect opportunity to connect all the dots.
And
But
at 3 p.m. before your show, aren't you doing something tomorrow? On Thursday?
the start of both concerts at 4 p.m. and 7:30 on Thursday will both shows will begin with the sort of group breathing exercise so that the performers and the audience can sort of enter into the listening experience from the same jumping off point.
And breathing and breath are always central to playing music, correct?
I mean, they're central to living.
Living,
So I
yeah.
think, the more we can center them in our music making, it's ideal.
Do you find as a musician you sometimes forget? Because an amateur, when I play, I often remind myself halfway through I forgot to breathe.
Yeah, totally.
So tell me about that.
Well, I think, well, listen, we're never gonna totally forget to stop breathing because our bodies have an autopilot setting, which is what we're on most of the time. But if you can start to train your body and your mind to access a more intentional way of breathing, it takes practice, like everything else. But it just starts to it changes the experience. It transforms it. You get to choose when you inhale, when you exhale. You get to sort of decide your own contours of breath. And certainly as a performer, not only does breathing from a very physical standpoint help settle nerves, calm the heart rate, stop the jitters, if you can start breathing through your phrases in an intentional way, I think it really transforms the shape of the music from the inside out.
That sounds great. I think people are in for a treat. So I didn't realize this was 7:30.
Yes,
Thursday.
there's 2 shows.
2 shows
Yep.
of the Kaleidoscope Chamber College
Collective.
Collective.
Yes.
Co-founded by Elena Urioste. It's been so great to chat with you. You're up to so many interesting things.
Thank you.
And it all does seem connected to each other.
Good, that's the
Should we
idea.
do a quick play of the Jukebox album that you did with
Sure.
Tom Poster?
Yeah.
And this is called Jukebox Toodaloo. Let me just see if I can get it. Sorry, I'm just trying to. before we let you go, you want to just tell us about what we're just listening to from Jukebox album with Tom Poster, Elena Urioste?
Sure, that is one of our sillier contributions to that particular album. So during the pandemic, Tom and I, faced with completely empty concert calendars, we did something that now looking back, it's actually a really special period of life. But we did something called the Urioste Jukebox Project, where we put out one video online per day. The idea was to put out one video per day during lockdown, which of course we thought was going to be like 2 or 3 weeks. But 88 days later, we found ourselves with a pretty massive library of online videos of us playing everything from very traditional, Beethoven slow movements and Mozart, to really wacky medleys that Tom arranged of like 80s hits and nursery rhymes and Disney songs. And it became such a sort of special part of our musical partnership, and people from all over the world became really invested in this project online, that we wanted to sort of take it out of lockdown and bring it to the studio and also to our physical concerts. So we recorded an album of some of the things that we did during lockdown. We couldn't do everything because
88's a lot.
88's a lot. Getting rights for a lot of the Disney songs was going to be a nightmare, so we had to swap some things out. But as one new piece for the Jukebox album, Tom wrote this ridiculous jukebox toodaloo, which involved him playing the kazoo, slide whistle, the recorder, the cello. He's like very, very talented at all sorts of things, and multi-tracking all of these things. So that's what you just heard.
So 88 days. Each day you put together a piece you could then go online and perform. How many people were following that?
A lot. By the end, just people from all over the world said they were tuning in to see what it would be.
What a way of rolling with the pandemic.
It was pretty cool.
Sounds
it's not what we thought
special.
we would be doing. And we had just been married. We were supposed to be on our honeymoon, so it was definitely not the honeymoon we imagined for ourselves. But looking back, it's actually kind of a treasure.
But it is an interesting honeymoon.
Yeah.
All right. So, well, anyway, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much.
It was so great to meet you and hear all about you, Elena.
Thank you.
And I want to remind everybody, you might see her around town, especially if you're on Audubon Street. If you're going to coffee, you see through the window at ECA. She's doing yoga. She's teaching the kids. And on Thursday, April 24th at 4 p.m. and 7:30, Elena and the whole Kaleidoscope Chamber Collective are going to be performing at the Yale Schwartzman Center. Go online and sign up for that. So thanks for joining us. I hope you love the rest of your visit to New Haven, not your first. Harry Drost, thanks for working the controls. And I thought we were going to take it out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It'd Feel to Be Free from their CD, A Plea for Peace. Right now, there is something with the control. Oh, there it is. Okay. And this is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day and all night long on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.